Well, hello everybody, my name's Ryan and I'm a driving instructor, and today just a little bit of everything. So today just a little bit of everything. Before I go any further, like, comment and subscribe. So yesterday I had a little meeting with Warwick, who's a manual driving instructor out of Blythe. I always cover Blythe anyway, but I had a little chat to him, and he's a new approved driving instructor who was just asking me, bouncing some questions off me. But I kind of got the point as well that actually what we talked about was stuff that was kind of insider information about the approved driving instructors, but does it really need to be? So for a little bit of Warwick's help, because I know you're going to watch this, I'm going to summarise what we kind of talked about yesterday, because some of it might got a little bit lost because there was so much we went into that, anyway. There was one thing that came up in an email. So they said that they were going to ban the bots. They said they were going to revolutionise the test booking system, and that the approved driving instructors wouldn't be able to make any bookings on their system. So this is the bit that's complicated, and I was always kind of going to make a video on this anyway, of why the booking service for the approved driving instructors is there, and it's so we can do swaps. So I'll put in the kind of the side here, the background or whatever. So this page is kind of telling you that all the test bookings where we can book a test at these really specific test centres. But you'll find that you can book a test anywhere in the country, which they're not going to do soon. And they said it's going to be the spring. So they sent us an email saying, no, we're not doing it yet. It's going to be the spring. So the bots aren't banned yet. The changes haven't happened yet. And they don't know when they're going to happen, because apparently they don't know how to fix the IT that dates back to the 1970s. So what that was that when you used to do a driving test back in the olden days before the internet, you used to phone up the driving test centre, which just so happens to be, in our case, the office was in Gosford, and they used to say, yep, you can have a test in Blythe, we've got availability on such and such a date, which test would you want? And they used to go on their system, their computer system, and book it manually. If you needed a change, you just phoned them up and changed it. That's all you did. Now, the system dates back to that period, and it's literally giving the person that's doing the job the work of making that booking instead of your driving, because you used to go to your driving instructors and pay them 40 quid or whatever. Driving test price hasn't changed for like 7 years or some ridiculous thing. I'm not going to write on the screen when it is. It's been a really long time at 62 quid. Probably needs to go to 100. That's something we talked about. On the very next page, it tells us about availability. So it tells us, I'm not going to show you the page on where I've made my bookings, by the way. I think that data is personal. It's blurred out in the background, but you can see that method. The next bit then was my availability. So I can put in the system. So if you put in, when you're booking a driving test, the driving instructor's approved driving instructor number, then what it does, it interrogates this service and sees if the driving instructor is unavailable. So say, for example, if your driving instructor doesn't want to do, I don't know, Christmas, he might block out all of those dates, kind of like what I've done on this one. And that's what we do. So when you put the ADI number in for candidates, not for instructors doing it, it checks this. If you're an instructor, put these dates in so that you can then block out. So if they're using the apps, for example, to get a sooner driving test, then what it'll do is it'll also check this to see if you're available, and it won't book it for them. So if I can't do Wednesday at 3 o'clock, it'll refuse to find them that driving test, if you see what I mean. Also, as well, we've got the approved driving instructor registration page. You should always keep up to date with that. It's a little bit complex to go into. I'll put where the page is here. I'm not going to go into mine because it's got my personal details. But when you go find a driving instructor online, you can choose whether you want to be on that list or not using some options. I chose not to be on that list for quite a long time because it wasn't essential for me to be on it. It's just like sharing my personal data. I don't really want to do that. So that's the system, and that's the reason that you add the approved driving instructor number. Isn't because of the test and stats and stuff, which partly it is, but it's also to check availability and check their registration to see if it's up to date. Second thing is, then we move into about those tests and about the waiting time. The waiting time's forever. We all know that. We can't do anything with it. Because people are waiting for tests, they're not having driving lessons. So what we've seen is a drop off in the number of driving lessons, and therefore the price has changed a little bit. People have gone anywhere from 36 to 45 quid, depending on, even potentially if they're doing one at a weekend. So some people are charging more for what they do, and some people are charging about. So I'll tell you, I'm charging 42 automatic from anywhere between Morpeth and New Biggin, so Ashton as well, and Pegswood and Bedlington and Blythe and Cranton. So that's my area that I cover. Now I do find, and this was the question that Warwick asked, why do I cover 3 driving test centres? Sometimes I get people all the way out on the edge of Morpeth. Now I used to be the only auto instructor, one of 3 that used to cover the area. One left their franchise, and another one stopped. So for a while I was the only one. It's like 4 years ago, but it was a while ago. And now there's loads, because instructors are transitioning from doing manual to auto as they see the number of manual lessons drop. But then I think it's just the time of the year. It's just a crap time of the year. Christmas time, always people stop making bookings and stuff like that. Also they stop booking because of the waiting time for the driving test. So they don't want to make driving lesson bookings with an approved driving instructor if you can't get a driving test. It kind of like, yeah. So what they do is they go out of mum and dad's car, they carry on with mum and dad's car, they get a driving test time, think they can pass, and because they haven't had that professional help, sometimes they're not successful because they're missing stuff, because mum and dad are not 100% capable of identifying a fault and feeding that back and coaching that back in the same way an approved driving instructor would. Now we did have a chat, me and Warwick, about should there be regular training, and I think, yeah, I've always thought this, regular training for the approved driving instructor, same as you do for your buses, so that once a year you go in a classroom and you're singing from the same hymn sheet, because we do get a different level of training across the board depending who you're trained with. So I trained, I'm not scared to tell people, I trained in Newcastle with Pass and Go, and I passed my part 3, and then since then I've done a standard check. But whether that franchise was any good or not, I'm not going to go into that. It wasn't, but that's not the point. Is that I trained with the school. It was really, really useful. It helped me pass, but the level of training that I was given initially probably didn't suit the environment, and I switched instructors. And when I switched instructors, my level went up. So there we go. So people are using mum, dad's car, uncle's car, sister's car, whatever, and what they're finding is that they're not quite ready. They probably won't go for approved driving instructor driving lessons, which brings on another thing that potentially we might have to go into progress. And next year the DVSA, the people that oversee the driving tests, might decide to go towards the ticky box. Have you done this? Have you done that? Have you done this? Before you go for a driving test. I don't know if they will, but you never know. So the YADI number, booking service changes, presenting somebody for a driving test. So moving on from that, if I was presenting somebody for a driving test, I absolutely want to know that they'll pass. I absolutely want to know that they are capable of doing a mock test, or at least the minimum, driving independently without you telling them anything. If that person can hold a conversation, they're probably really competent, really confident, understand what's happening. However, have they got, because you might go through the ticky box progress thing, have they got the emotion? Have they got, do they believe, do they understand what it is to pass a driving test? Do they understand about managing their nerves? And this is all stuff that you need to work through. I'm not going to tell you how to do that, because everybody's got their own different methods, like getting, how are you feeling today? Have you had a good day? What are you doing later on? Things like that. It's expressing them. They come to the driving lesson with this baggage of emotion or ideas, and they want to express those ideas to you and try and show off as they drive around, and you've got to contain them. You've got to contain your pupil a little. Time to pass. How long does it take to pass? Well, you might get 80% on your progress report, but you've got that feeling that somebody's not quite right. Why is there a feeling there? Yeah. And you've got to make sure that they can pass. That time to pass Could be anything. How long is a piece of string? Nobody really knows. It could take forever. You don't know. It could be you're not going to hold somebody back because they're good. You're going to let people pass when they should. Going back to why I cover then, is this all in? Because I cover somebody at the edge of Morpeth, they potentially could do Alnwick, Blythe or Gosforth. And there's people that I've done in Cramlington that technically could do Blythe but then do Gosforth because they're just as close. Or they might decide that they want to do Alnwick if they live a little bit further north. If they live kind of towards Pegswood or towards Northgate in Morpeth, it's very similar driving to Alnwick. But you wouldn't put yourself out of the way to go and do that. For example, I got a pupil there who wants to go and do his test in Berwick because he's got a booking there. Well, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to go to Berwick. Same as I'm not going to go to Gateshead. The reason is because I don't really know those areas. They're very difficult to follow when you're training it. You're a pro driver. As an approved driving instructor, you're a professional driver. You've done a driving test of an hour and 10 minutes to get to that badge, that approved driving instructor badge. As you've done that, you should be able to drive anyway, so you're a professional driver. That doesn't mean you can really do it though. That just means that you can follow a route, and if you're with a pupil, you end up concentrating on two people instead of yourself, and it can get a bit messy. So I choose not to do them. Also, the further away, you've got to take cost into account and things like that. One more thing, which was going back to that time of year. We normally pick up in January and February. I got a ton of tests. I actually had, and this is the thing, I actually had out of like 30 tests that I've done in nearly 4 months, I had about 25 passes, and that seems quite a lot. But what's happened is because you get a lot of passes all of a sudden, and you get a few fails, got 5 fails or something, then it doesn't mean that your pass rate is suddenly 75%, because they use the last 12 months. And I had a bit of a bad spell where I was going through just a few fails. It's not a reflection on your pupils, not a reflection on you. It's just what happens. You can't guarantee that something isn't going to happen. A car pulls out of a junction, you're not ready, and the examiner duels you. The light goes red and you don't realise, or goes to green and you don't set off. You will get people that get nerves and find it incredibly difficult to contain their nerves on the day. And it's about managing that, and it's about managing that emotion. And yeah, we talked about a lot of things yesterday, and about routes and areas, and you know, where do I take my pupil for their first lesson? And I hope, Warwick, you recall what I said, because you know, in Ashington it is a little bit difficult. You wouldn't take somebody out of Ashington all the way, or even Pegswood all the way down to kind of Chemist because it's easy. You would take them in their local area, and it's identifying that local area, looking on maps and Google Earth. Can I see where I can take this pupil? And I give you a load of areas. I give you Stop Hill, for example, and there's a school over on the north side of Morpeth. I hope you aren't covering as much area as that. I only did it because I was kind of the one on the area at that time, but occasionally you'll get one who says, oh yeah, I'm in Morpeth, or I'm in Pegswood, and you find out they're up at Widrington Station, or they're out at Scott's Gap, and you go, Scott's Gap, Morpeth, and you're like, no, I'm not. So you've always got to consider where somebody is. You wouldn't, like, I don't really cover, even though it's quite close to where I live, I don't really cover kind of Seaton, Delaval, because I find it quite difficult. It's a funny place to get to relative to my other lessons. If I'm moving along a line between Morpeth and Ashington and then down to Blythe, that's my line. That's where I kind of stick to. 30 minutes between me gaps. Lesson gaps, 1 hour, 1.5, 2. You set them yourself. You use Total Drive as well. Total Drive is a really useful tool to manage your business on. Yeah, kind of sums up what we did yesterday. A lot to go into, but the big one, of course, was altering that driving test booking system, which has been delayed. Anyway, probably got tons of comments. The EV ones exploded. Yeah, we had a little discussion about EVs in our line of work. if we cannot get to a free public charger, which there are some, not many, but there are, or if we cannot get to a public charger that is cheap enough, or charge at home, because we'll be charging kind of every other day, given the mileage that we do, if we were working flat out 30-35 hours a week, we may find it incredibly difficult to use an EV in certain circumstances. That's kind of what I was getting at on the video. I did a backup video, follow-up video, telling you those actual costs. There was a person that did a really long drive from Scotland to Land's End using free chargers, and everywhere he went they were occupied, everywhere. And it turned out that these free chargers are going to be heavily used. So as a result of them being really heavily used, then people just kind of use them all the time and make it very difficult for people. So you end up going to a paid charger that costs you about, on average, and this is the average public charger, 59 pence per kilowatt hour. So in my line of work, if I was doing more than 30,000 a year, it's not practical for me right now. And I'll probably get to a point where I've got to suck it up, buttercup, and use an EV eventually. But well, I'm going to retire in 15 years, so there'll still be petrol cars in 15 years. Probably they'll be knackered, but yeah, or hybrids at least, charging you pence per miles and everything. Lots to go into on that EV. For me right now, it's not appropriate. Certainly for Warwick and doing manual. So yeah, if you do need some lessons, by the way, just drop us a thing on the comment on it. And we've got manual and automatic. Doing the manual, there was big shout for, can I have a manual as the manual cars run out, or buy manuals that are kind of in 2035, a 10-year-old manual. There's nothing wrong with buying an older car with low mileage, but you absolutely know that if they stop selling manual, there's going to be that big power grab for those manual cars 3 or 4 years before it comes to an end, because people will get wind. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Anyway, I've talked enough. Like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one, and bye for now.